Hi, I'm Barb Culver, President of Resonate, Inc. in Cincinnati, Ohio. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited about this particular presentation because I'm going to share with you a new series of programs for which we will be doing YouTube presentations. In my work with clients over the years, I am increasingly aware of how important it is for us to be able to be a strong resource for our clients when they are navigating life's changes. I've seen some clients do it very well, and I've seen other clients struggle. And so I've decided to create a series of presentations designed to provide to you ideas, resources, tips, suggestions, recommendations for how to successfully navigate life's transitions. And we've decided to work with 4 particular areas of life transitions. The first has to do with divorce. The second is retirement. The third is issues of aging. And the fourth is end-of-life transitions. And we're going to begin today with the end-of-life transitions, and I am so pleased and excited to have as my very special guest Judy McBride. Judy is a chaplain at Children's Hospital, and she has been there for 12 years. Judy's an ordained minister, and she's also a licensed professional counselor. Now, one of the reasons I've asked Judy to join us today is because I am convinced that for us to do the very best job for you that we possibly can, it is essential for us to collaborate with professionals like Judy. So Judy, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. As I mentioned earlier, there are many life transitions, and there are a few that we have chosen to do a series of presentations on. In my experience, this transition about end of life seems to be the most difficult. And I'm wondering if you could comment on that for us.
I totally agree. I think it's a very difficult subject to talk about, and I think really there are such heavy, powerful emotions involved. And thinking about that, there's really 2 reasons among many probably that come to mind. And the first is really the uncertainty involved, and the second is the permanence of death. So when we talk about uncertainty of the afterlife, there are some people who have particular beliefs, maybe based on religion or based on things that they've read or traditions that they've grown up with, or perhaps even from near-death experiences that they've read about, and phenomenon of seeing light or being removed from the body or different experiences like that. So some people do have that, some sense of what they believe will happen in the afterlife. But the truth is, nobody knows. Nobody has any certainty. No one's been able to come back from the dead and give us any, specific facts about what that might be like. So there's tremendous uncertainty. And with that, then I think comes a lot of worry and anxiety and fear. And so it's those fears that I think are really hard to talk about. What might happen next? We don't like to think about that for ourselves really, or for our loved ones. And so in the permanency of death, it's very hard to grasp the fact that, our loved one or ourselves won't be here at some point and will forevermore never again be on the earth. And so that leaves a tremendous hole, and again, brings out a lot of fear, I think, for us. And so, we'd rather not talk about it. We tend to think that if we ignore it, maybe it won't happen.
Yes.
And so it's just so emotionally laden that I think, so many times we'd rather not talk about it.
Yes, yes. And I think about the difference between an expected death where there's been a diagnosis of you've got 6 months or 12 months or whatever it might be, versus that unexpected death. And with the expected death, I'm sure that you still find there's there's this fear about what either my body might go through or my loved one's body might go through in terms of the level of pain or medication or whatever that might be required.
Right.
And then you've got that unexpected, sudden death. And I was wondering if you could just comment on some of the changes that you might notice if it's an expected death or an unexpected death in terms of how people respond.
Right. Well, certainly by the very nature of it being unexpected, it catches us completely off guard. So we're defenseless. We're at our most vulnerable if there's been a sudden, unexpected death. And so often we're left with just the what ifs so much in our life that, what if I had done something differently or didn't do something that I did do? What if my loved one had done something differently or didn't do something? So there are a lot of hanging what ifs that we never really get closure on. And along with the what ifs, really, for an unexpected death come a sense of guilt often or regret. So, perhaps I should have seen something or done something. And along with that is the anger, particularly if it wasn't something that could have been avoided. There's anger either at the person that perhaps some responsibility in that, or perhaps at the loved one, him or herself, if it was due to a choice that he or she had made or could have done differently. And so that's very hard burden to carry the rest of our lives. And of course then the last part of the unexpected death is not having that chance to say goodbye. And that's something that you'll never get back face to face with that person. There are ways that you can, work through some of that, counseling, therapy, whatever the journey is for those who've lost someone unexpectedly. There are ways to say goodbye. There are ways to memorialize. There are ways to incorporate that person. But it's harder than if it were an expected death. And there was that opportunity really to prepare and to say the things that you wanted to say, to make sure that if there are any loose ends between you or even in your own life, you can begin to tie those up. And there's more of a sense of peace, if you will, in that preparation.
Just this morning I had a client in my office, and unexpectedly she told me that her brother has a very stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and he's been given 6 months if he doesn't do something. And he's choosing no treatment, even though he's, quote, just in his 60s. And she said at one point, as she was talking with me, she said they offered him a feeding tube as a part of the treatment. And she said, for me, if I could take a feeding tube and I thought that it could give me a chance to beat this, I'd say, put it in now. So there was some of that anger, some of that not understanding why her brother would choose to say, no, not for me.
Yeah, and you bring up such a very important point, is that everyone goes through this differently. There isn't a set template that everyone follows and does this and then this and then this. So it really is personal choices based on values, beliefs, hopes, goals, all of those things. And what's most important is somehow being able to communicate those. Again, we get back to that first question of why is it so hard to talk about? But this is a very important issue of what you said, even in that circumstance. For someone to be able to, first of all, express her own feelings, so good for her being able to talk about it with you. But hopefully maybe she'll get to a place where she can talk to her brother about that. So for all of us, when we encounter that experience, either with ourselves, perhaps our own impending death, or a loved one, can we talk about those feelings, those choices, why we want what we want, and why that means something to us? Because in that, that's the way that understanding can come about. So we've talked about some of the difficult aspects connected to this, yet
we've all, I know, either experienced ourselves or read stories or had somebody tell us about the blessings, about the gifts that can also come from this end-of-life experience. Could you talk some about that?
Yeah, I really do think it is a gift, first of all, before the death, if possible, to, again, talk about that. So it's a gift, I think, that parents or other loved ones can have to have their affairs in order. You know, to do what they can legally, to make their wishes known, their medical wishes known through advance directives, to perhaps even do some pre-funeral or memorial planning, or at least let people know what their wishes might be. Because in the time, if I know what you would want done, there's a sense of peace in that.
Yes.
And it's a gift that you have given me to know that I'm doing what you would like.
Yes.
So I think beforehand there's a gift.
Yes.
I also think a blessing comes in then how we are able to kind of reconstruct that loss. It will never be the same. That relationship that we've had with that person will never be the same, but a new relationship can come forth out of those ashes, so to speak. So I can do something in my life that I know will carry on your legacy, that will be honoring to my loved one, that will be a memorial to that loved one. I think that's another one of our greatest fears in death, is that our life will have meant nothing. So if there's a way that we can know that somehow our legacy will continue, somehow will be remembered, then a blessing comes out of that our lives really did mean something, that we counted for something, and it's still making a difference in someone's life, whether that's through a foundation or through, you know, there's so many memorial runs and charity things, you know, you've seen that particularly if it's around a specific disease or something that they died from, then people want to, you know, in that person's name, you know, continue to give something so that a cure can be found. So those are some big things, but then there's also little things that you can continue to carry the blessing of the person's life even on in their absence.
So what you're saying now, because I know that you work at Children's Hospital, is obviously the kids don't need or have time to do medical directives and legal documents and so on. And yet I'm thinking about Sandy Hook. I'm thinking about other parents that are on the news who are doing that very kind of thing you're talking about.
Absolutely.
To memorialize that child and to carry forward that child's memory. So do you find that that's one of the more successful ways? I'm not sure that's the right word to use.
I do think it's a fulfilling way. I do think it's a tangible, recognizable way that, first of all, you continue to see that person's name, if it were a memorial run, so to say, or you know, something like that. That person's name even continues to be invisible to people, and they talk about that person. They share the story each time. A lot of parents will find that they will write a book, or will be willing to be part of support groups for other parents. You know, they'll want to share their experience, what they went through, so to continue to help someone else who's going through that. So yeah, we see that all the time in our work with parents, particularly because a young life doesn't necessarily have left that big of a footprint themselves in you know, say a career or work that they themselves did. So parents really want to continue to make that life matter and bigger than it was even in the short amount of time. You know, the ripples continue to go out from that person's life.
Well, I could sit and talk to you for the rest of the day, but I know that we've got some time constraints. So I'd just like to ask, as you think about how you'd like to, you know, summarize for our listeners, what is it that you might say unexpected or expected when we hit these end-of-life issues, what would you say is most important to remember that people might just kind of grab onto at the very beginning to start to give them an anchor to work their way through what they're facing?
Well, I think all of, like you said earlier, all of life transitions involve change, and that shifts the ground under us, and we get very uncomfortable and afraid and all of that. But if we know who to call, if we have a plan, if we know there's a person, that we're not alone, no matter what that transition is, that we can reach out and accept the help. You know, that's not always easy to do either, when we're feeling particularly vulnerable or alone or hurt. But that we aren't alone, and there are people who will share those burdens with us when we're going through those life changes, and that ultimately makes a difference and helps along the way, whether it's end of life or all the other transitions that we tend to go through as in life.
Yeah. Gosh, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. Wow. This has been very special for me. I hope that it's been special for you as well. I hope that you can begin to feel, see, understand the incredible importance of collaboration with professionals like Judy as we try to prepare ourselves the best we can to be sensitive, to be helpful to you when you're going through some type of life transition, yet knowing that we don't have the professional credentials that somebody like Judy does. So we are reaching out in a new way to form collaborations beyond those that we share with accountants and attorneys, to open ourselves more to collaborations with psychologists, so that when there is a time of transition for you or a loved one, that Resonate is one of the resources you think of first as partnering with you, so that you know we are here to help walk that walk with you, and so that you know you are not alone. Please feel free to either look at our website or please call area 513-605-2500, and we'll be sure you get connected to the proper person. If you have any questions on this topic or anything else that you'd like to ask us, please feel free to contact us. And also remember that we are currently accepting a limited number of quality referrals to finish out this year and to begin next year. Thank you again for your time.